Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Cisco Support Community Expert Series webcast. We're glad to have you with us. A few housekeeping notes to begin. As you entered the WebEx console, you either joined us by audio broadcast or by phone, which was automatically muted. Because of the large audience in attendance today, you will remain muted throughout the event. When you have a question, please feel free to enter it in the WebEx Q&A panel. You can find the Q&A panel in the lower right-hand corner of the console. Please leave the WebEx chat window for communicating with our WebEx facilitators for any technical problems you may be experiencing. We would appreciate your input regarding today's webcast. A short survey will pop up when you close your browser at the end of the event. At this time, I'd like to introduce our host, Dan Gerson. Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cisco Support Community. Today, we present a live Cisco Support Community Expert Series webcast. Our topic today, Cisco TelePresence Management Suite Extension for Microsoft Exchange, Installation Overview. My name is Dan Gerson, and I will be moderating today's event. Our expert joining me today is Tim Walker. Tim Walker is an escalation engineer within the Cisco TelePresence Solutions Group in Cisco's TAC in Western Virginia. Before joining Cisco, he worked at Tandberg as a product support engineer for the Tandberg TelePresence Management Suite products, TMS Microsoft Exchange integration, and Lotus Notes integration products. Tim has over 15 years of experience as a systems and network administrator and holds several Tandberg certifications. Welcome, Tim. Our expert panelists are Theodore Todorov and Senait Rembratu. They will help in answering some of your technical questions during this event. Now, I'd like to briefly outline the format for today's Expert Series event. Our expert will start with a presentation on Cisco TelePresence Management Suite Extension for Microsoft Exchange Installation Overview for the first hour of the program. And then we will provide an answer to the question that you've all been waiting for of what do iTunes, Twitter, and Cisco TelePresence have in common. Stay tuned for that. Then we'll dive into the live question submission from the audience for the remainder of the event. During our live presentation, you may submit your technical questions to be answered by our expert and a team of Cisco technical experts using the Q&A box on the right side of the console. The team of technical experts is well versed in Cisco TelePresence Management Suite, so please begin posting your questions now to give us the best chance of answering them. If you experience any technical issues, please post those questions to the chat. We'll be asking polling questions today during this webcast, and we do encourage you to participate by answering them. You may download a copy of today's PDF presentation using the link in the chat window. Now, let's get started with today's event. We'll get started with a polling question. What is your level of experience with Outlook resource scheduling? A, I have heard that it can be done. B, I have scheduled resources through Outlook in the past. C, I schedule resources through Outlook all the time. It's part of my normal daily operations. Or D, what is a resource? Take a moment to answer in the polling question box on the right. Now I'd like to hand the mic to our expert, Tim Walker, who will give you advice on Cisco TelePresence Management Suite. Tim, take it away.
Again, thank you guys for joining. My name is Tim Walker. So today, the agenda that we're going to cover, we're going to go over the system overview, system requirements for installing the TMSXE, the migration process, if you have the previous version of the TMSXE installed in your environment. We're going to go over the uninstalling the previous version, disabling Outlook Direct Booking, and installing and migrating on your new TMSXE server. Performing a clean install, deploying the Cisco form. We're going to go briefly over the booking process and troubleshooting, and I'll also provide you with some additional error messages that you may see during the installation. Okay, the system overview. This is a diagram of how the TMSXE is now going to be deployed. If you currently have the TMSXE installed, you know that the previous version actually installed on the Exchange server. This is a change. The TMSXE 3.0 now actually installs on its own separate server. But in the deployment, we envision that you have an Active Directory, you have an Exchange server that's running Exchange 2007 or Exchange 2010, a server that's running the TMSXE 3.0, and you have your TMS server that's running at least TMS 13.1.2. And on the Outlook client side, that you are running Outlook 2007 or Outlook 2010. System requirements for installing the TMSXE. On the server that the TMSXE 3.0 is going to be installed on, you need to have Microsoft.NET Framework 4.0 or later. You need to be running Windows Server 2008 with Service Pack 2 or Microsoft Windows Server 2008 R2 with Service Pack 1. For those who want to deploy virtual servers in their environments, virtual servers, deploying the TMSXE on the virtual server is supported. We only recommend that you make sure that your VM meets the recommended requirements for running Windows Server 2008 or Windows Server 2008 R2. In order to be able to migrate from the previous version of the TMSXE, you need to be running one of the three following versions, TMSXE 2.2, 2.3, or 2.3.1. On the Exchange side, you need to be running Microsoft Exchange 2010 with Service Pack 1 or Exchange Server 2007 with Service Pack 3. Exchange 2003 at this point is not supported, although we do support migration from that previous deployment of the TMSXE to the 2007, and I'll cover that later on. On the Exchange server, you need to be running the Exchange Web Services. They need to be enabled. Also, with Exchange 2010, there are some following policies that must be applied, and that's covered in the documentation, installation documentation for the TMSXE. On the client side, the 3.0 version of the TMSXE supports Outlook 2007 with Service Pack 2, Microsoft Outlook 2010, Outlook Web Access for Exchange 2007, and Outlook Web App for Exchange 2010. This is a screenshot that shows the configuration for EWS on the Exchange server and the security permissions that are being used. These are the default, which is integrated Windows authentication. And on the TMS side, you need to be running at least TMS 13.1.2 or later and have HTTP or HTTPS connectivity between the TMSXE server and the TMS server. And then within TMS, prior to performing the install, if this is a clean install, a new install, you will need to have either a Microsoft Exchange option key for X number of endpoints or a one application integration option key within TMS. This is kind of like a site license so that you can integrate all of your video systems that are currently being managed by TMS. The migration process. We support three models for migrating from your previous deployment of the TMSXE to the TMSXE 3.0. Again, in the previous deployment, you need to be running either the TMSXE 2.2, 2.3, or 2.3.1. And with running one of those versions, we support the migration in an environment where both deployments are going to be using Exchange 2007, so that this is my first deployment, my existing deployment of, say, TMSXE 2.2 is running on Exchange 2007. I'm going to deploy the TMSXE 3.0, and I want to perform a migration. I can do that without having to any additional steps. The other two options are whereas the original deployment uses Exchange 2007, but your new deployment of the TMSXE is going to be using Exchange 2010. And then lastly, where your original deployment was installed under Exchange 2003, and your new deployment is going to use Exchange 2010. Now, for those last two, there are some additional steps that an administrator would need to take, such as moving the mailboxes from the previous Exchange version to the new Exchange version before actually installing the TMSXE and trying to perform a migration. For the migration, we actually provide an application in two flavors, a 64-bit and a 32-bit. And what this application will do is actually export your current configuration settings for the TMSXE 2.3, 2.2, 2.3.1 versions. Export those settings into and export it Cisco TMXSE settings text file. That text file, once you have that, you can actually copy that and move that to the server where you're going to deploy the TMSXE. And during the install process of the TMSXE, you'll be prompted for that file. And I'll go over that again further. This is a sample of the file that is exported. In that, we capture some information about the configuration of your existing TMSXE deployment, the TMS server, the secure setting, the conf user account. Remember, in the TMSXE within TMS, there has to be an account, the TMS conf user account, and that account had site admins privileges within TMS. So it also had the book on behalf permissions. So we capture that, the domain for that user account. We also capture the service account as the EWS username and the domain that account is a member of. We capture the EWS server or the Exchange server. And then we capture some additional configuration settings such as certificates, the email address for the service account, and the configurations or TMS system IDs and email addresses for the resources that were enabled. Now, this is all following a process flow, so we would expect that you would follow just as this goes. So the next step, once I've copied the export settings application to my current Exchange deployment or TMSXE deployment, then I would actually, once I have exported that configuration settings and moved that file over to my new TMSXE server, then what we recommend is that the next step in the process is that you actually uninstall the previous TMSXE application. This can be done by going either through the Add or Remove Programs or going to the Products program group on the Start menu and actually clicking to uninstall the application. The program will leave some log folders and registry keys and associated accounts in place. What we recommend is that you remove the remaining files and data and that you go into the registry key to the Tamberg registry key and actually delete that registry key. And this would be performing it through an add remove programs. The next step in the process would be to disable the Exchange Integration Service account. Remember, I just mentioned that TMS Conf user account that was created either as a local account on the TMS server. Within TMS, that account was tagged as the Exchange Integration Service account. We recommend that you uncheck that or set that setting to no. It is no longer needed for the TMSXE application. The account itself is still needed, but it no longer needs to be tagged within the TMS database as the Exchange Integration account. Then, again, this is a screenshot within TMS of the service account. Another point to be made here is that the service account still needs to be a member of either the site administrators group or a member of a group within TMS that has full booking permissions, so or the video unit. I know in some environments they actually lock it down a little bit more than that, and so they have a specific account that they're going to use. The key is that this account needs to have the book on behalf permissions. And as a quick aside to from the polling, it looks like 22% of you have actually scheduled resources in the past as a normal part of your daily operations, which is good. The next step in the process is to disable Outlook Direct Booking. This is due to changes in the TMSXE and due to changes in within Exchange. Direct Booking is now incompatible with the Auto Accept feature for room mailboxes in Exchange 2010. So before moving your mailboxes in a deployment where you're currently running Exchange 2003 and you're going to be deploying Exchange 2010 in your environment, before removing the mailboxes, moving the mailboxes from Exchange server from the Exchange 2003 to Exchange 2010 or Exchange 2007 to Exchange 2010, you would need to actually go and disable or turn off the Outlook Direct Booking. The way you would do this would be to actually log into the mailbox as the resource and actually go to the calendar options and resource scheduling and uncheck the Auto Accept meeting request. And there's a screen capture of what that looks like. Now again, this should be done prior to moving the mailboxes to the new Exchange 2010 information store or storage group. Once that's all been done, all your resources have been moved over to the new Exchange deployment. You have your export settings file so you can perform your migration. If it's a new installation, you're here at you've got your Exchange server set up. You already have your resource accounts, mailboxes, and AD accounts created and identified. You're ready to proceed with the install. You would just simply click on the TMSXE setup executable. That'll bring you to this window, and you would click Next. You'll get your end-user license agreement, and then the next screen is going to prompt you for where you want the TMS application to be stored on your server. You can change that to another location. Once you've specified your location, you would click Next. And if you are performing a migration, you would want to click on the Migrate option. And once you select the Migrate option, then in the drop-down, you would be able to browse for the Cisco export settings file that you copied over to the server. And again, this file actually has your configuration settings for from the previous TMSXE deployment. Once you've selected your export settings file, the next screen takes you to begin the install. The install itself is relatively quick, doesn't take long at all. And then once that's finished, you click Finish, and that will open up the TMSXE configuration tool. In a migration, it's going to auto-populate the fields with the information that was exported from the export settings file. So in this case, I have my TMS server. The first configuration that it does is sets up the connection between the TMSXE server and the TMS server. In this case, I have my TMS server. I'm using HTTP rather than HTTPS. And I've specified the TMS Conf user account that is already in TMS. I've already logged in. It is a member of the site administrators group. And now I just need to provide the password for that account. One thing to point out here, in the previous TMSXE 2.0, 2.2, 2.3 if you allowed the tool to create the account, it created a random secure password. So if you don't know that password for that TMS Conf user account, what I recommend that you do is actually, if you created the account locally on the TMS server, that you log in remote desktop into the TMS server and actually reset that password for that account. And same thing if you used a domain account, that you actually, if you don't know what the password is, that you actually reset that. Once you've populated each of the fields with the password, and the next button will actually become active. And then it moves on to want to configure the connections for the Exchange web services. And in this case, it's already populated, pre-populated with the information from the export settings file. And it's actually populated the user account for the TMS service account. Again, the password, the same thing in the previous version. If you allowed the tool to create the account and password, it's a secure password. You probably want to go in to reset that. This service account would have been, is a domain account within Active Directory, so that it actually has a mailbox associated with it. Then you select your domain and the email address for the sender email address. This is the email address that the emails that go from the Exchange to the organizer or scheduler is going to be in the from line. And then you have an additional checkbox where you can tell the tool whether or not to forward requests without script when the Cisco form is present on Exchange 2010. Again, once all those fields are populated, you can then, the next button will actually become active, and you can proceed. In a migration, what it's going to do, in the right column, you'll actually see the tool populate with the configurations from your export settings file. For the resources that were enabled. But you'll also, in the left pane, see that the system is actually communicating with the TMS server, and your TMS, the structure for your TMS will actually be presented in the left column, so that you can highlight or hit the drop down, expand, select a resource, and enable it. Now, again, a key with the TMSXE 3.0 is that we do not create the mailboxes and we do not create the AD accounts. So your administrator, system admin, will need to have created an AD account and associated it with the mailbox. That again is a time where you want to make sure that you have your naming conventions aligned across TMS and Exchange. So once it's pulled in my systems from the export settings file, the next button is active, I can proceed. At this point, the integration is asking you where you want the locations to be for your log files for the TMSXE. Again, you can browse and change that path to be a different path than what is being displayed. And then you can, the save and proceed to migration is active. So you'd want to click that button. Once the migration process kicks off, you'll see once it has finished, it'll actually show you how the migration went. It gives you a report of the number of bookings permanently deleted, the number of bookings temporarily deleted, and with a note there that the TMSXE will attempt to regenerate those bookings. And then 5 bookings left on the Exchange server, and you can review the log file. Now these two options here are asking you when Cisco TMS attempts to regenerate bookings, they may be declined or changed to reservation only by Cisco TMS due to resource availability. And we're asking, what it's asking is, what do you want to be done? For cancellations, you can tell your options are send decline to the organizer, or you can delete and log it. And the same thing for downgrading. You have the option of send notification to the organizer and downgrade and log. Once that's done, you click Finish. You'll receive a pop-up that says that the TMSXE service needs to be started. The TMSXE, or in the previous deployment of the TMXSE, there wasn't a service. There was the a Comp Plus package, and that package could be stopped and restarted in the component services. That is no longer the case. In the TMSXE 3.0, it is actually a service that needs to start and restart. Every time you open the TMXSE configuration tool and you finish your whatever processing that you're performing and you click Finish or Exit, it's going to tell you that the service needs to be started and ask you if you would like to restart it. Likewise, also, when you open the tool, it'll tell you that the service needs to be stopped. And then after you click OK or Yes, it actually tells you the state of the service, and you can check that under the services. All right, so this brings us to our first polling question. Or second polling question. Dan?
Yes, our second polling question. How familiar are you with Cisco TelePresence Systems Scheduling? A, what is TelePresence Scheduling? B, I have a minimal hands-on with TelePresence Systems Scheduling, but it is not running in my production network. C, we are planning to deploy Cisco TelePresence Systems in our network environment. Or D, I have Cisco TelePresence Systems in my network and I schedule them on a daily basis. Take a moment to answer on the right side, and then we'll get back to the presentation. Okay, Tim, let's continue.
Okay. All right, so this next section we're going to cover performing a clean install, which is not much different than a migration with the exception of we're not actually migrating in our previous configuration. So on a clean install, what you're primarily concerned with is remember back on the system overview, we had the Active Directory, your Exchange server that has EWS running on it, your TMSXE server. So on a clean install, your major concern is making sure that you're running the right operating system, and that if it's using a VM, that you're making sure that you have the appropriate configuration for running Windows 2008, either standard or the R2 version. All right. So again, you would click on the executable, the setup executable for the TMSXE. Again, present it with the end-user licensing agreement. And in this case, we're going to take a clean install. Click the Install button. Now, in this case, this wasn't auto-populated. I actually took the screenshot after I'd entered the information. So on the first screen, all the fields will be blank. You would specify your TMS server IP address or FQDN. You specify the protocol that you want to use for the communications between the TMSXE and the TMS server. And then you would need to have created a TMS Conf user account. Now, this account doesn't have to be TMS Conf user, just so long as it is an account that it has access to TMS and is a member of the site administrators or video administrators group within the TMS application. And then the domain. Once that, again, all the fields populated, you'll receive the next button will actually become active, and then you proceed on to configuring the Exchange Web Services connections. So again, I pointed to the address of my Exchange server. I identify what protocol I want to use, and in this case, I'm going to use and for the user account, I'm using the service account. Again, this actually has to be a account within your Active Directory domain that has its own mailbox. And then you specify the domain and the email address for that service account. Once that's selected, once that's populated, I click Next. I get my next screen that actually has me in I'm communicating with my TMS, and in this case, I've actually selected some systems and already moved them over. I've specified the email pattern. I want to use the display name, and the domain is going to be my Area 51. On a new clean install, you will see the system show up as green. Once you've done all of that and you've finished your configuration for cancellations and downgrading, you can click Next. And again, you'll be prompted for where you want to locate the log files for the application. Once that is done, you'll get this. All settings have now been saved. Click Finished. And then you'll be presented with the screen asking you, telling you that you need to start the service, the TMSXE service. And then the next screen gives you the state of the service starting. And so at this point, we've actually gone through for an environment whereas I have the previous TMSXE deployed, the process for actually performing migrating that configuration in preparation for the new server. I've actually performed some cleanup of the old install. I've actually deployed or gone in and corrected turned off the Outlook Direct Booking, and I've actually performed an install with a migration and an install that's just a clean install in the new environment. Next, one of the features with the TMXSE that was in the previous and still is in the current is the optional custom form. The TMSXE does come with a custom form that can be used to add additional functionality to Outlook clients when they are creating or modifying video conference meetings. Again, it is optional. There are some prerequisites that need to be done before, and in the documentation we actually point you to these two Microsoft Tech articles because in Exchange 2007 and Exchange 2010, public folders were no longer a part of that initial deployment, so an Exchange admin would need to go and configure their public folders in order to be able to publish the forms. The form itself is still the same. The users have the ability to configure the bandwidth, the picture layout for the conference, the reservation type, whether it's an automatic connect, manual connect. They have the ability to set the conference to be secure, to display the options, the display extend meeting option. They can add a web conference, so if they wanted to include WebEx. Now, some of this configuration is dependent upon the configuration of TMS. They also have the ability to set a billing code, assign a password to the conference, and to send messages. And this Add External button gives them the ability to add external dial-in or dial-out participants per the different type of protocol, ISDN, IP, H323, or SIP. Once you've deployed your form, you've integrated your resource accounts and mailboxes, your TMS is up and running. Now organizers can begin to book meetings in TMS. So the booking process, best practice, is that the organizer creates a meeting request using Outlook containing one or more of the video resources, and then he hits send. Exchange checks the resource calendars for the availability. Is this system free at that time, date and time? And it will do one of the following. It'll send an initial confirmation to the organizer that the resources are now booked and passes the request on to the TMSXE server. Or it notifies the organizer that none of the resources are available. In this scenario, the TMSXE is not contacted and the organizer must reinitiate a booking. Or notify the organizer that one or more resources are unavailable and sends an initial confirmation that some of the resources are now booked. The requests for these resources are passed on to the TMSXE server. In this scenario, the organizer must either change the meeting time or find other resources to attend. Next, the TMSXE will gather up the requests from the Exchange and pass them on to the TMS server. TMS will then check to see that the systems are available for that date and time within its database. If the default setting for conferences is auto connect or one button to push, manual connect, or no connects, TMS will also attempt to book routing resources for the conference. So what that means is if the conference is set for auto connect and I book 3 resources, then TMS will know that it'll do a check for the availability, but in the background process of TMS, it also, because it is video, it'll build a call route if it's able to. So the systems that are the resources that were scheduled will then be connected when that conference kicks off. TMS will actually handle the sending of the dial string to either MCU or one of the resources in the meeting to have it dial the other resources. On receiving the results of the booking request, the TMSXE will do this. It will either notify the organizer that all desired resources are available. That comes in the form of an email. Or it will notify the organizer that none of the desired resources are available, and then the organizer has to go back and select different resources. If TMS determines that the routing resources are not available, then TMS will request that the TMS book the systems without routing. And what that means is TMS will not build a call route between the resources. And that pretty much brings us to the troubleshooting section. What I want to, again, as an aside, how familiar are you with the TelePresence scheduling? And looks like 33% have Cisco TelePresence systems. In your environment. Cool. All right, so let's move on. Troubleshooting. A couple of things you can do when you're experiencing problems with bookings. The first thing that you'll want to do is check the state of the TMSXE service. So I booked a meeting in Outlook. It doesn't show up in TMS. So you want to check to make sure that the TMSXE service is actually in a started state. If a booking is successful but doesn't appear to be what they were attempting to book, it is best to ask the organizer, what process did they follow for scheduling. During the install phase, if the installer is not able to find a trusted certificate, you will see this message, and it is recommended that you click to allow untrusted certificates. In this error message where it says cannot connect to the Exchange mailbox for a specific resource, To resolve this, you would want to make sure that the service account has full mailbox permissions to the associated mailbox, or remove the resource in the tool by actually clicking on the resource and actually clicking the arrow buttons to the left. With the TMSXE, there are some event logs or application logs that are created. This slide actually shows how to get to them. The key point on this is that you have the ability within the log file to change the level of debug information. The default is that the level value is set to info. When you're doing troubleshooting issues, one of the things that you will want to do is go into that this log file and actually change it from info to debug. And if you're opening a support case, that log, we will actually need that log as part of the case so that we can review that. So it's better to help. That helps us to get closer to resolution when we have the log files when the case is open. This is the location of the log files. Notice in this slide that it is local and on Windows 2008. Local disk, program data, Cisco TMSXE config. One key note here is that that program data folder is a hidden folder. So just looking through the program files, you won't see it. You'll need to actually unhide the folder by going through Organize. Again, this is a screenshot of where you in the log file to increase the log level. This pop-up will be presented if your Exchange server does not have the this Microsoft knowledge base article update installed. Before the install won't allow you to proceed. So what you'll actually have to do is actually, click OK, back out, and perform the install of the perform the install. Perform the install of that knowledge base article and then continue on. And this is a screenshot troubleshooting issues with the TMSXE service. Again, the service, as you can see from this screenshot, that it is set to automatic, so that if the server was to reboot, the service would automatically be restarted. If you go in and the service isn't started, right-click on it, restart. The service account, the service does use the network service account. And so if there's any policies in your environment, security policies that may require that password to change, or if the account somehow manages to get locked out, then this service will not run. With the TMSXE, there are some application settings or configuration files that are XML documents that can be edited. This is a sample of the application settings file. And again, you can see that it has in it the location, my TMS server, my Exchange server, the service accounts that are being used, and then there's some other configuration settings within that document. Ultimately, we do not recommend for these files to be edited. We recommend that you use the GUI. And then we also provide a monitored systems XML file. This has the configuration for the systems that are enabled or integrated with the TMSXE and TMSN Exchange. Again, this can be edited. One recommendation would be do not edit it and add a resource if the resource's mailbox and AD account have not already been pre-configured, to include making sure that the TMS service account actually has the full mailbox permissions to that resource. And then we provide a log file under the program data, Cisco TMSXE logs. This log file would also be required if you're opening a support case for an issue with the TMSXE. In this, we can follow the process of the booking process and actually identify any errors that were thrown by the tool. And then there are some command shell commands that we actually provide for the Exchange administrator for turning on auto processing and auto accept settings for the resource mailboxes. And this is just continuation. This error message is possible to be received if on your TMSXE server, if you have a proxy set on your TMS server, or TMSXE server and on your TMX server. In this case, I actually had a proxy set on both, and I had to remove that proxy on both servers in order for the communications to go through. And this is just a screenshot that shows that there are required fields. The fields cannot be left empty. The next button will actually not become active until they have been clicked. All fields have been populated. This was another error message that you could receive if the server actually has a proxy set on it. If the EWS service or web page is down, you will receive this error message that you cannot connect to Exchange Web Services. So again, what you'd want to do is look at things like what are the security permissions on EWS? Is it integrated Windows authentication? Has it been changed? And so forth. This screenshot is here to show that there is an error in that the tool itself, when you perform the export or run the export application, that it will actually, we export the information in uppercase. Now this issue has since been resolved in the later version of the TMSXE, but in the event that you're deploying the 3.0 version, in performing a migration, the migration will actually migrate in just as it exported the settings in. So if it's in uppercase for the server address, it will actually the next button will not become active until you change it from uppercase to lowercase, or put the IP address of the server. With that, we have about 10 minutes left, in which case I wanted to actually go to present this, go through an actual live installation and migration. And to do that, I am going to share my desktop. and you should now be seeing my TMS server. One thing to note that I'm running actually TMS 13.2. Again, the documentation says 13.1.2 or later. And so my existing deployment of the TMSXE is on this is my Exchange server. What I want to do first is I've already copied I use the appropriate export settings file so that I can export. That is my file, and what I'm going to do is go to the server that I'm actually going to perform the installation on. I'm going to copy that here in preparation. And back onto my Exchange server. I'm going to go ahead and uninstall the previous version. Before I do that, let me show you that I actually have resource accounts already integrated. These are the systems that are not. These are my systems that I have integrated within the previous version of the TMSXE. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that application. Oh. I'm going to remove the program folder. And I'm going to clean out the registry. All right, so my Exchange server no longer has the TMSXE application installed on it. I can go to my server running Windows 2008 that is going to actually have run the TMSXE. And I'm going to run this setup. I'm going to perform a migration, and you can see, it pre-populated the fields. I already know my password. That means at this point I have successfully connected to my TMS server. I'm actually going to change this. I'm going to use HTTP, and I'm going to click Next. This means that I have successfully connected to EWS on my Exchange server, and it's already pre-populated the systems that I already had integrated. And you can see I'm actually talking to TMS. I can see my systems that I have. Now, one thing to note, we typically do not, so this is resources that you're going to be scheduling. We expect that you're going to use the TMS conference settings to control how the bookings, what the bookings are, how they are made, and so forth. So some of the tool will actually use, if you do not deploy the custom form, the tool will actually use the resource, the configuration within TMS. I click Next. I'm being prompted for where the log files are going to be stored, and I want to make sure I change that one also to be in that location. I get my readout, and I click Finish. Yes. Okay. And that is it. Now, again, there are things that you will, as your network administrator or exchange administrator will need to verify. So and they can do this by either going through Exchange, the management console, or the command shell. But they'll want to make sure that the TMS service account has full mailbox access to all of the resource accounts, or resource mailboxes. As soon as this populates, I can show you what that is. Okay, so this is a room system. You can see it has a recipient type of a room. All the resource accounts need to have a resource type of room. And then when I go to full permissions, I need to see that the service account actually has full mailbox permissions on the resource. And with that, I'll stop sharing. And Dan, I will pass the ball back to you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Let's move into our third polling question. What other Cisco TelePresence training would you be interested in attending? A, Cisco TelePresence Video Communication Server. B, adding CUCM and CTS systems into TMS. C, Cisco TelePresence Management Suite provisioning extensions. D, Cisco TelePresence Management Suite extension for IBM Lotus Notes. E, other. Go ahead, take a moment to answer. And now we're finally at our teaser question. What do iTunes, Twitter, and Cisco TelePresence have in common? And the answer to that, in 2006, iTunes sold its 1 billionth song, Twitter tweeted for the first time, and Cisco TelePresence was born. A little bit of history there. Okay, so we've finished our main portion of the event, and now we're moving on to the Q&A activity. Remember, you can submit your questions at any time. We do have plenty of time here to get to everybody, so don't be shy. Just go ahead and put those questions into the Q&A box. Let's go ahead and get to our first question. How can I build redundancy of TMSXE?
That's a good question. Actually, that is a very good question. I've not had anyone want it to do that before. In most environments, well, I suppose they can run Exchange clusters. You can run an Exchange cluster, and in which case the TMSXE application would be talking to the cluster. On the other side of the TMSXE, the application will only talk to one TMS server. So I guess I'd have to answer from that standpoint that for the TMSXE application itself, probably not. But again, it's something I can take back to our development staff, and definitely a feature that we can request to have added in.
Okay, let's move on to our second question here. Do I need a separate server to install TMSXE? Can it be installed on the Exchange server?
It's not recommended for it to be installed on the Exchange server, but you can install it on the TMS server.
Okay, that was an easy one.
Yeah.
Let's go to our third question. We have a customer that's looking to book video conferencing rooms using Outlook. With this integration, is that possible?
Yes. Yes, that's the whole. So the TMSXE actually provides the connector between the Exchange server and your TMS server, so that users can book these scheduled video conference meetings just as they would a normal meeting.
Okay, great. All right, let's move to our next question. Is it possible to use several Exchange servers connected to only one instance of TMSXE?
Again, yeah, I think that the tool itself will point to only one server running the EWS. Now, if that's a cluster, then of Exchange servers, whereas the cluster is just for redundancy, so that one cluster member goes down, the information store or the storage group is still the same one that the application is going to hit, then the answer is yes.
Okay, moving on to our next question. can you further explain user licenses in the TMSXE?
There aren't any user licenses per resource. So, like I said, we offer two flavors of licenses. One is per systems, whereas in some environments, customers they have 150 video rooms, but they don't want to integrate all of them at the same. They don't want all of them to be integrated. So for those customers, they can buy a per number of system licenses, and only that number of systems will be able to be integrated with the TMSXE. Whereas if you get if you get the application integration license, then for every system that you have within your TMS or every resource that is being managed by your TMS, you can integrate all of those with the Exchange integration. Now, granted, there are some additional things you have to do. You have to mailboxes for all the resources. So if you've got 200 or 4,000 resources in your TMS or video systems in your TMS, and you want to enable all of them to be schedulable through Outlook, you have to create mailboxes and AD accounts for each one of those.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to our next question. Can you run TMSXE and TMS on a virtual machine?
Yes, you can. We do support TMS running on a virtual machine, and we do support the TMSXE running on a virtual machine. Again, the key thing there is that the VM that is the TMS server or the VM that is the TMSXE server cannot be running with shared resources. We require dedicated resources for the specific VM or virtual machine that you're going to be installing the TMS or the TMSXE on. The problem with most people is that in most environments is that they're not actually allowing enough resources. With TMS, if the database is going to be on the same server, then that's going to eat up space and memory on the server, and then you have all the log files. So it's an issue of making sure that the VM has ample dedicated resources for both of those two applications. And then, like I said, both applications can reside on the same VM as well.
Okay, sounds good. Let's go to another question. And keep in mind, we do have some time left. Please do keep posting those questions into the Q&A box. Here's our next question. Why do I not see any MCUs in my Outlook lists?
Because again, we don't. The MCUs aren't something that TMS is going to be able to schedule. That'll actually have issues through Outlook. So the tool actually allows for video resources to be integrated, not the MCUs. And then we recommend as best practices that, again, under the conference settings within TMS, that you configure things like MCU failover in the event. The way the tool works is TMS on one side will look and say, all right, I've got 3 video resources that have been scheduled, all right? It looks at the configuration for those resources, and then it says, all right, this system has multi-site, this system has multi-site, this system has multi-site, so it doesn't need to pull in an MCU. But if 3 endpoints and none of them have multi-site, then TMS will bring in an MCU to automatically connect the conference. So you don't need to be able to schedule the MCUs. And then from the other end of that is in most environments, you probably wouldn't want your users to be able to schedule the MCU directly.
Okay, let's move on to our next question. We have someone here who's seeing an error they're trying to work around. It said in installation step 2, Exchange Web Services, they're seeing the error message. The specified domain does not exist or cannot be contacted. And they mentioned the mail domain is another one, is another domain as the Active Directory domain.
All right, so you're talking about potential that the one domain is a child of the, or you may be hitting the force root. First question, the TMSXE server, is it a member server in the domain? Is there a trust relationship between, if it's multiple domains, is there a trust relationship between those domains? And the account for which you are that's logged into the TMSXE server that is installing the tool, does that have permissions within that other domain? Also, if this was an install, where it says verify all fields are filled in correctly. Is the these are things that you'd probably need to know a little bit more particular, maybe even get a screenshot to see what is this towards the TMS server or is towards the Exchange server? I would believe it's the Exchange server. Oh yeah, Exchange Web Services. So then what I would do is one, make sure that the TMXSE server is a member server in the domain, or that there's a trust between, if there's child domains, that there is a trust between them.
This might be a great follow-up question to bring for this user to come back into the Cisco support community.
Definitely.
Tim will be there until July 6th. That way you have more of an open forum for discussion, and you can probably post some screenshots and sort of further this discussion. Great. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. Can I book a meeting that only has dial-in participants from Outlook?
If you have published the custom Cisco form, yes. That's where you have the option to click. With the form, you have the ability to add external participants. Without the form being published, no, you cannot.
All right. Go to another Outlook-based question. Can I book just a web conference from Outlook?
No, you cannot. It's not possible. The booking, if you don't add any participants into the conference, the tool is going to look and see if there's they are integrated accounts. So just booking a web conference and having that show up through TMS, no.
Okay. Okay, another question from our audience here. If I book 3 endpoints for a conference through Outlook and it wants to use the MCU, will TMS add the MCU automatically?
Yes, it will. Again, it depends upon what TMS knows about the 2 resources. If 2 endpoints, typically that would be a point-to-point conference, but if TMS is configured to always use an MCU, then it will add the MCU to every conference, and that includes bookings that are made through Outlook. So that one actually really depends upon the configuration of TMS. You have 3 options, always accept point-to-point, and only if needed.
Okay, good question. And we have another virtual machine-based question. What is the recommended VM environment for the TMSXE?
That follows the structure, Windows 2008, 2 gigs of RAM, depending on the 2 gigs of RAM. And the port availability, HTTP, HTTPS open between the TMSXE server and the Exchange server, and the same between TMSXE and the TMS server. Hard drive space, 30, 40 gig hard drive should be good. We don't actually specify the hard drive space within the within our documentation, but yep.
Okay, good question. We have another question. I think we may have touched on this earlier, but looks like there's still a few more questions. Does this require any additional licenses for the integration of TMS and Exchange?
No, it doesn't. Only as long as you have the application integration or the Exchange option per number of systems, that's all you need. No additional licensing.
That's always good. The less licensing, the better, right?
Yep.
All right. Another question here from our audience. Does the room resource need to have auto accept configured in Exchange?
For this version, no, it does not. We recommend through the process that it be turned off. In the old deployment of the TMSXE, it was automatic. If the tool created the mailbox, it actually turned that on. For this version of the TMSXE, it is not needed. And as a matter of fact, Outlook direct booking is no longer an option. So we recommend that it be unchecked, turned off.
Okay, good question. Okay, here's another real-world scenario. What will happen if I try to book some endpoints through Outlook, and those endpoints are down right now, but the meeting is scheduled for a later time? What will happen?
So for those systems, TMS would know that the systems it knows the state of the system, but it also knows the availability of the system. As long as the conference isn't due to kick off while the systems are down, the meeting would still be booked. At the point that we're talking about the system availability, as far as Exchange is concerned, the systems are available at the time. As far as TMS is concerned, the systems are available at the time. So the booking, whatever time the booking is due to is scheduled for, the systems can be actually turned off, and that booking would still will be updated in TMS and Exchange.
Okay, great question. Let's go to another one. I want my rooms and resources to have separate identities. Is this supported?
Yes, it is not. It wouldn't be what we consider best practices, because the tool expects that the room that's being used and the video system have one identity. Otherwise, you end up having, users will have to know they'll have to know the name of the video resource, and they'll have to know the name of the actual room that resource is in. Now, like I said, it is supported, whereas you have a room has an identity or mailbox, and then your video resource has a mailbox and its own identity. As long as the user population knows to associate those two together, then yeah. But best practices is the room. If it's a system that does not move around, it's not a cart system, then the room and the video resource should share one identity.
Okay, here's another question. Can I book meetings using Outlook Web Access?
Yes, you can. For both Exchange 2007 and Exchange 2010, we do support Outlook Web Access and Outlook Web App.
All right, I think we've got time for one more. what permissions are required on the resource mailboxes?
So for the resource mailboxes, the TMS service account needs to have full mailbox access, and then to the resource AD account, the application, the service account needs to have the send as and receive as permissions on the AD account.
Okay, thank you. Great job, Tim. Just want to move around. We've got a few more slides. Just want to run through and some great information for everyone. We do have an evaluation that will pop as soon as you close this window. Those who fill out the evaluation will be entered in a raffle for a free $20 US dollar gift certificate. So please don't forget to fill that out before you leave. Also, as we mentioned earlier, Tim will be answering additional questions inside the Cisco support community. The link is here. You can also download that in the PDF document. Plenty of time to speak with Tim directly in the forum and get your more detailed and specific questions answered. You can watch the video or read the Q&A 5 business days after this event at the link right here. Our next Expert Series webcast in English coming up very soon. The topic is Cisco Smart Call Connector and New Mobile Clients. That's going to be on Tuesday, July 10th at 8 a.m. Pacific Time. Please check out the Cisco support community for more details and to register. The link will be provided as well. Following that, we have another webcast coming up in Spanish. Topic for that will be Cisco Firewall Services Module Configuration and Troubleshooting. That will take place on July 17th at 7 a.m. Pacific Time, 10 a.m. New York time. Again, the registration for this event will open on next Thursday, June 28th. The link will be provided within the Cisco support community website. We have a few current events running right now, forum-based events in the Cisco support community. Cisco expert Randy Wu will be talking about Cisco Unified Border Element for PSTN SIP trunks. We also have another expert discussing troubleshooting Nexus 5000 and 2000 series switches. Both of these topics are going on right now until June 29th. We also have a number of events starting next week. A few of those topics include integrating VCS with Microsoft OCS Link using B2B UA, security on iOS router devices, configuring, troubleshooting, and best practices on ASA and FWSM failover. These discussions will be starting on July 2nd inside the Cisco support community. Please check us out in social media. We're participating in just about everyone out there. So please notate these links. Check us out on iTunes, Google Play, LinkedIn, Google+, and of course Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Cisco support community does support many different languages. Excuse me. If you speak Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, Polish, or Russian, we invite you to ask your questions and collaborate in your language of choice. Again, these links are provided in the PDF. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. Special thanks to Tim Walker for an excellent presentation. And again, you can download the PDF, and this presentation will be made available within the next few business days. Thank you for your time today.